So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the panel. We have an excellent lineup of speakers. I've known most of them. We have one of the earliest employees of OpenAI. He left, then went back, started near, went back to OpenAI, and then left. And so this is going to be a really exciting discussion. So why don't we start with very brief intros, so just people have some context of what you're doing.
Hi everyone, I'm Emad Mostaque of Schelling AI. Previously I was CEO founder of Stability AI. We built models like Stable Diffusion that had 300 million downloads, and now at Schelling we're working on the concept of universal basic intelligence for everyone in healthcare, education, government, finance, and beyond.
Hey everyone, I'm Tarun, CEO and co-founder of Sahara AI, also associate professor at USC Computer Science Department. Been working on AI over 15 years, mainly focused on natural language processing, and starting Sahara AI, which is focusing on building a blockchain platform that prioritizes user sovereignty and provenance infrastructure. Simply put, we're trying to create a sort of a copyright system to power revenue sharing mechanisms on top of the AI assets.
Hey everyone, my name is Alex. I'm one of the founders of Near. Near is one of the layer 1 blockchains. It's a sharded blockchain with an emphasis on usability. But Near back in the day started as an AI project. Both of the founders, myself and Ilya, were coming from AI backgrounds, and now we're starting a new lab called Near AI, the goal of which is to make sure that we're moving towards a world where open source AI is always competitive with proprietary solutions from the walled gardens and large corporations. Yeah, exciting to be here.
Hey, I'm Tarun, founder of Gauntlet. I also invest at Robot Ventures. Probably my main reason I've been around decentralized AI is my first job involved a lot of hardware, and we kind of got replaced by AI, so I can talk about that.
Great. So I guess why don't we start with, I'd like to make this more of a discussion. How do you think about competing in centralized solutions? Like, what is the role, what is the need for decentralized AI?
Right. Okay, I will start. There are several problems. I guess one of the big problems is that if you look at any I guess, technology that was created in the past decade, all of them are today controlled by large corporations. In fact, in every single case, what happens is that those corporations capture all the data, monetize it, sell it. Users effectively are not customers, they are products. And artificial intelligence is moving in the same direction. And this is something that generally I think in Web3 we are good at fixing. And the big differentiator of, we call it user-owned AI, of user-owned AI should be that users are in control of the data, users are in control of how they use AI-powered applications.
Yep. I think there's different user groups within this AI ecosystems these days, right? And we really care about three groups of people. The first one is these AI developers or AI model developers. And these days, if you think about prototyping a model idea, it's so expensive and very time-consuming, given that you need to really find vendors of data, find vendors of compute, and then you need to raise cash up from VCs. This whole process takes at least like 3 to 6 months to even start trying out some of the ideas. So I think these model developers facing the limitations on accessing the resource as well as the capital, which, and I think there's a great opportunity that the entire blockchain backend platforms and DeFi capital markets can provide much fast tracks for them to realize their idea, right? And at the same time, if you think about the AI users, right, users of the model of the application, they are day by day giving out their feedbacks and sort of preferences about themselves, right? Very private personal information in exchange of free access, say, using ChatGPT. But over time, they didn't really realize, I think this is a really burning problem that OpenAI, for example, accumulating hundreds of millions of these kind of user preference data, as well as the things that they uploaded, like the PDFs about your financial situation, your text message, your emails. And then over time, they're going to create a better version aggregating all of these individual domain experts that might be able to automate part of your jobs and even replacing your jobs and monetization opportunity. And that's where we're going back to this whole problem of privacy protections and sort of user ownership about what they have given to the centralized provider. right? So, and I think these are the two major big problems we have to tackle, and this is a great opportunity coming from blockchain and crypto ecosystem for solving that.
Maybe Tarun or Emad, I really care about the cost because in this industry, it's very ideological, right? It's like, yeah, user privacy and decentralization is great, but the actual implementation of it, you realize users really don't care about that. They care about lowest cost provider, most efficient provider, and and so is it realistic? And is there actually a possibility for decentralized AI to compete head to head on feature, on price, relative to a centralized solution?
I think that just from personal example, when we built Stability AI, we were running about 10,000 NVIDIA A100s, which at the time when we switched it on 2 years ago was the 10th fastest supercomputer in the world. It was 8 times the compute of NASA. And that's what we needed to build state-of-the-art image, video, audio models. So we built some language, but again, we were experts in the media side, and we built state-of-the-art open source models. That cluster cost $400 million. Elon Musk's new cluster that he's using to train state-of-the-art models is the equivalent of 300,000 A100s and costs $3 billion. So these are the table stakes to get in on the training side of the core of these models. Now, the interesting thing is, you see OpenAI's O1 model last week. It's hit 120 IQ, which is crazy, but it's moved from requiring the large supercompute to thinking longer, which suits the more decentralized, parallelized things, like I'm on the board of Render, for example. We've got a million GPUs, and the ability then to spread things out. Even then, again, there is a very interesting example in Web3 whereby the biggest success story has been Bitcoin. Bitcoin uses 160 terawatt hours of energy a year on specialized compute infrastructure. All the data centers in the world use 350. So I think there are some elements there where we can compete, but right now it's very difficult because you need billions of dollars of investment to build the state-of-the-art models. And the question is, will that change so we can use distributed billions of dollars, as it were? Or can we create mechanisms that we can create these clusters and then have an open alternative to these fully centralized solutions that typically only reflect one point of view? So that's like the Google image generation where you type in sumo wrestler and you get Indian female sumo wrestlers or whatever, which, DEI on steroids.
Yeah, I think there's a couple components to that. So first, edge applications. So applications that maybe don't have immediate financial outcomes. Like in a lot of scientific research, actually training a model is extremely cost prohibitive relative to the payout. So, I think, for instance, even when AlphaFold was started, there was actually a lot of contention within DeepMind as to whether to give them even like 1/10 of the resources they needed. And it took a long time for people to believe that we should actually be trying to build AI models for things that aren't text or video or immediately commercializable. So I think the edge assets, edge kind of products that people want to build models for, oftentimes get lost in the cost discussion because everyone is so focused on the what seems like the right model. The second thing, to Emad's point, is that the architectural changes of going from a pure, hey, we want one big model with a large initial data set to we have a more reinforcement learning type of game theoretic model that might make a different latency versus bandwidth trade-off in the sense that I'm willing to wait more at inference time, but I don't need as much complexity. That architectural shift is actually going to completely change how the clusters are developed. It's probably going to change how you do sort of inference in the long run, right? Like you're doing this kind of trade-off between training and inference, and I think that the battle for that is not done, and it's not going to be done tomorrow.
There's an interesting thing there I'd just like to point out. So with AlphaFold, I was one of the authors of OpenFold, where we did the open source replication of AlphaFold, and we provided all the compute for that as well. There were a lot of errors in it, which we didn't understand because it was a black box. So I think open source is very interesting and decentralized because you have so many more people looking at it that you can figure out errors in these models that are going to have an increasing part of our lives and be an increasing part of our lives as well.
Yeah. I'd like to shift the discussion to the actual products. And so we've seen from, marketplaces for compute, We've seen, the ability for people to monetize their models. What are the use cases you guys are most excited about, and you think are probably going to hit scale and be most, widely adopted in the near future?
I can start first. I think this part of this question is also from to answer the previous question, right? I mean, if you look at the whole progress we have made in the past 3 years, all these advancements on AI model capability, there's a whole lot of things come from the success from centralizations, especially from putting GPUs together and then putting machines together into a data center, grouping a team of very talented AI researchers and let them really like go wild in terms of implementing the ideas. A lot of things come from resource allocation, put together the best of the people and best resource to create things. And I think this really tells the fact that some parts of the AI development shouldn't be immediately decentralized. And if you choose to do that, it's gonna pretty much just like disrupt the successful recipe right away, right? And I personally believe that, for example, compute. I don't think we should immediately go for decentralized computes with a very heterogeneous set of GPUs trying to put together a channel model or inference model, right? But yeah, maybe a GPU marketplace is a great idea that you can balance out the sort of the imbalance distributions of the GPU resource over the globe, but you don't have to have a blockchain-based solutions for that right away. But right now I'm seeing maybe the best part for us to explore in terms of decentralization is actually the ownership and governance on the AI assets, right? The data sets and models that you're producing. And what that means is if you're trying to put together a resource to build a model that you believe is going to be successful, why don't you giving out the shares of your model to the people who participate in the process? For example, someone give you 100 hours of A100 GPU, and you have to use that because you don't have that much of cash to purchase that upfront, right? Then why don't you give out like 20% of the model you create in exchange of that, right? Similar things can happen to the data providers because you are touching people's private data, and you know those private data are really valuable for making your model different from the others. So this pretty much asks for a new sort of governance and economic models for coming together, crowdsource a model, and then you are giving back everyone some part of the ownership. When the model starts monetizing itself, there should be a permissionless and trustless manner to attribute all these revenue sources back to every single stakeholder. And that's exactly where the blockchain can come in to help to make this whole thing in a trustless manner, permissionless manner.
I think one of the most interesting, there's a couple of use cases that we are actively using today. One of them is decentralized inference. There are several companies. We internally use a company called Hyperbolic, which is it's very competitive with Fireworks or Together in terms of price and speed, but it is based on top of a large decentralized cluster of GPUs pulled from various actors. And I think generally inference is one of the more successful businesses in Web2 as well. It's the most has the highest demand in this space generally. And the second use case, which is very interesting, is we've been internally at Near, we've been working towards building what we call an AI developer, like end-to-end development of smart contracts or applications since at least 2021, and we've been annotating very large amounts of data. So we have a large pool of developers, of people who annotate logic, etc., and that runs on top of blockchain. And without blockchain, it's generally a very hard task because people who do data annotations, they usually come from markets where payments are very hard, right? And on blockchain, you do work, you get paid right away, right? And it's you don't have to wait. Like if you work on Mechanical Turk, you have to wait until like the week ends to get your payment aggregated because payments are expensive. But if you do annotation on blockchain, the work is done, the money is yours, right? At the end of the day, you can already cash out, and for many of those people, money are needed today, right? For many of them, like they live from the payment to payment. So that has been working very well, and without blockchain, that would be practically impossible to build in the same way.
I think if you think about practical use cases, so when we released Stable Diffusion, it used all the GPUs across Amazon. There weren't any available. And now then it came 100 times faster thanks to the open source community. So it went from 30 seconds an image to almost 300 images a second in some instances. If you look at what's coming, you'll be able to generate a full-length Hollywood movie by the end of next year with the current technology. And you can do that on an asynchronous basis because it doesn't make sense to do real time because you have to wait an hour to see how things are. And movies are made of 2.5-second shots. The transformation of media is one of the biggest use cases of overall inference compute. But then the IP attribution of that, the ability to remix flows of knowledge, we have a system called Comfy UI we built, where rather than just this goldfish memory AI that you type a prompt in and it comes out, you see the entire logic flow. And then if I share that media file with you, it reconstructs every decision made. These are coming, and these will be one of the biggest uses of it in media, but then also in areas of knowledge. So now medical language models, and we're building those, you'll have a cancer model that has comprehensive, authoritative, up-to-date knowledge on cancer and outperform human doctors on empathy. So nobody will ever be alone again on their cancer journey, or MS, or Alzheimer's, or dementia, or autism. And think about the use cases of that, it's massive. But then we look at distributed ledgers and the verification aspects of that, protecting your own healthcare data and having AI analyze it on the edge. That's immensely powerful. And you can look at something like Apple Intelligence, which is an on-the-edge model that has adapters for various knowledge features. Your smartphone has enough knowledge to analyze all your healthcare data in place, but then how does that go and find more knowledge? We can build that on infrastructure like some of the people here, Sahara and others, are building, and that will be a huge unlock in the next few years because finally we'll have holistic healthcare or personalized education. One-to-one education is a 2 sigma improvement. And now, there's an amazing thing, Notebook LM, that Google's just announced. You drop a Bitcoin white paper or anyone's white paper in it, it'll generate a podcast of 2 people discussing it almost instantly. Things like that are coming, but again, we need to have trackability, verifiability, coordination as we send our AI agents that have memory to go and solve these problems.
So I know you're kind of discussing privacy as sort of this philosophical thing that people always talk about for why you might want decentralized AI. But I'm going to give a more concrete version, which is, I would argue that from maybe 2012 to 2019, crypto actually sort of helped AI in the sense that it implicitly helped fund GPU development by creating demand for GPUs for a long period of time. The interesting thing is I actually think the current set of GPU roadmaps and also the ASIC roadmaps from people like Grok towards their implementations of trusted execution environments is actually something that crypto can take advantage of. So I think the performance on TEs, on GPUs, has gone up almost 10x over 2 years, and there wasn't really that much interest in improving high-performance parallel TEs until H100. And one of the reasons for that is that at inference time, people actually do want privacy for their weights, and there's a lot of demand that the hardware companies are getting for that. But that actually creates a ton of excess hardware capacity for private computation that I think people, in crypto have been dreaming about for years in terms of further out things like Zk and FHE. But the idea that the H100, H200 TEs are, only suffer 30% performance degradation on inference for Llama 3 kind of is something that I think you can take advantage of within blockchains, especially for co-processing and things like that. So it's not exactly a product per se, but it's something that has existed for a while and people never really had financial incentive to optimize the hardware as much as they do right now. And I kind of think that that's sort of one of the things that will enable a lot of things that people in crypto have very expensive proof of concepts for, but have never been able to make feasible.
People forget, but NVIDIA was kind of saved by crypto in many ways. Before, obviously, they got a ton of demand for it.
I want to quickly follow up on that part. I really like the idea of making things more tangible, because I think there's this idea of doing thinking about FHE and say zero knowledge proof gonna be maturized in a year or something, which is totally far-reaching. And that some of the projects we see in the whole space trying to make things as a verifiable compute and trustless compute and privacy protective methods, they didn't even talk too much about TEE these days as a tangible solution that can be built within 3 months. Rather, they talk about a solution that you have to build for 3 years. I think there's some of us here have to think about, like how to make stage-by-stage approach in terms of using all these like potential TE solutions on GPUs and CPUs that we already have.
Yeah. When we think about permissionless aspect, it can be really good, but also it can backfire and can be really bad. There's certain people that think that AI will end humanity at some point. I don't ascribe to that view, but maybe a couple of you guys do or don't. I'm curious how you think about the permissionless aspect fits into, are we getting closer to potentially AI destroying humans if it is run in a permissionless, decentralized context, or does it not even matter?
So I was one of the signatories of the 6-month pause letter last year, which was mainly because I needed a break because AI was going so fast. AI time is like 5 times faster than crypto time, and that was already exhausting. But when I kind of look at it, so open source is permissionless innovation because you can take this couple of gigabyte file or Llama's 3 gigabytes, and you can do almost what you want with it. I'm not actually that worried about things like that, but more about governance and standards, because in my mind, I have one very concrete way that humanity gets wiped out, for example. We have 6 billion robots and a bad firmware upgrade. And that feels like a centralized problem, you know? Anthropic had a paper called Sleeper Agents. With a few thousand words, you can poison the 4 trillion words or 10 trillion words of a language model that it turns evil with a code word. And you can't tune it out and you can't find it ahead of time. So I think that the permissionless side does open up additional attack vectors, but it can get more resilient as well. And I worry more about centralized systems because we've all seen centralized systems have attack points. And now, like one of my old tutors from university built an AI that outperforms every human at pen testing. But the opposite of that is the AI that outperforms every human on penetration of systems. And we've got a wave coming, and I think open infrastructure has been proven to be the most resilient, Linux, MySQL, etc., which is why I'm more in favor of that than the centralized alternatives that will inevitably have flaws that are dangerous.
I mean, I'm looking at you, Alex, because you were at OpenAI, and
Yeah, at OpenAI, one of the things. So to give a little bit of background, I was at OpenAI in 2016. That's before even they had a logo, and I left OpenAI to start Near. I was there very, very briefly in 2016, and then in 2022, after Near was launched, I was briefly at OpenAI again, primarily because by 2022 they have been silent for 3 years. And I suspected they might have reached the singularity, and I just wanted to be part of it if that was the case. And one of the things I was doing is I was walking the corridors of the company, and I was looking into the eyes of the people, and I was trying to judge, are they evil or not? And it's very hard to do. Also, evil people are usually good at not showing that they're evil, right? So at the end of the day, I wasn't able to convince myself that this group of people that there's 100% certainty that that group of people will save us from annihilation if the AI will start running away. So from this perspective, I think that open source AI, like at the end of the day, if there is a chance that the models will do harm, it is much better if the models are available to everyone, because in this case, you can effectively good actors and the bad actors will have access to the same resource to compete with each other, than to have the models only available to 2 actors and then to find out that those 2 actors actually happen to be malicious and have bad intents. So I think from this perspective, we are way, way better off if the tier 1 research is owned by the society and not by a couple of actors. Like in US right now, those actors are trying to introduce regulation that will make it effectively impossible for anyone but them to a big extent to train very large models. So that would be a disaster if that happens. Yeah. Elon Musk was saying, hey guys, there's a new law in California that forbids people training large language models. I think this is a good law, but he himself is in Texas. So of course it's good if in California competitors cannot train big models. So it's
Yeah, I think maybe a more research version of Emad's point is, I think one of the reasons personally I like crypto research a lot better than AI research is you have to walk in with a threat model. You have to say, like, here is the set of actions that can be taken, and I assume a worst case outcome. Like, any possible sequence of actions can be taken as input. and I need to actually have the system robust to that. Like it has to be able to resolve itself from that failure, or it has to not deviate in price too much. Like you have all these kind of constraints. And in general, AI research has been much more of the opposite, right? It's very empirical, very like, I take something, I see if it works. On average, it seems to work well. You know, I define something like a metric, like an MMLU or something like that. Those are these average case types of things. So you don't really know the worst case except for, hey, when you search for poisoning a data set, right? And I generally think the crypto mindset of at least starting with a threat model and having this sort of adversarial belief is sort of something you only have in open source and permissionless environments. You don't have that in the Persian. There's really never an incentive for you to red team your own code if it seems to work well enough on average against the benchmarks you choose. And the idea that there's only one or two benchmarks that people are using to compare is also sort of unfair, right? For edge applications, I don't really care how well your language model does on translation. Like maybe I actually only care about for my specific subset of tasks. And I think you only get this like multi kind of metric comparison in the permissionless world. You don't have this like, hey, we're going to standardize on one or two comparisons. And I think these are all sort of social reasons in that people in those centralized environments don't have the incentives to kind of think about the adversarial stuff as deeply as maybe you do in the public environment. But I think you have to have both alternatives, otherwise you get stuck in a bad minima.
I want to end on that. If you ask any of the AI researchers at an AI conference, like, would you be comfortable deploying AI in a permissionless manner? I think probably 90% of them would say no. And I think the reason being two, right? One is even us, we don't really fully understand what these models are doing and how they make the actions based on, right? Because they are just probabilistic models. They are not programs. They make stochastic sort of predictions depending on the actual environments they will deploy and also the initial setup that you have. So sometimes they just make really funky mistakes that might be as simple as like they just look at a slightly different pixels than the ones they are familiar with. So that's like one big reason. We don't have full control and understanding on what these models is behaving, like compared to say smart contracts or any type of a programs that you have written. And number two is being that there's so much of human social values and common sense constraints, physical constraints, all these things hasn't been fully incorporated by these models in the sense that when you push them to high-stake applications, say filtering resumes, looking at application to your credit card, stuff like that. I mean, the textbooks of AI have been using these examples for decades, but still are very difficult for them to solve these days in a very robust and widespreading situation. Before that problem has been understood in a much more comprehensive way, I don't think we should be thinking ready to deploy AI in a permissionless manner at high-stake application. But for low-stake application, I think it's good to take some risk and let it fly.
Yeah. So we have 10 minutes left. I'd like to just perhaps shift the discussion back a little bit to, the product. I sort of see three categories. One, which is, crypto enhanced with AI features, like, a trading bot or some sort of risk mitigation kind of solution. You have AI enhanced with crypto properties. Perhaps AI agents are using a stable coin. And then perhaps the more interesting bucket would be the combination of crypto and AI, and it's only uniquely possible when you combine the two. Maybe if each of you could explore these three categories and where you think where the most opportunity is, or the things you're mostly interested in.
So from our side, we have a piece on our blog, How to Think About AI. We're like, there's a new continent, AI Atlantis, coming with 100 billion graduates and billions of robots. And they can code and they can sing and they can do everything. And again, they're goldfish now, but they'll have memories soon. We think that's going to cause massive changes in the global economy. Like, again, how many of you are hiring graduates for knowledge work right now, or you have the AI developer? How many people write a smart contract in 3 to 5 years? So one of our key focuses is, the original of crypto was Bitcoin. And again, there's permissionless distributed money algorithmically. And we're thinking, what does a post-labor economic system look like and money there? And this is something uniquely that I think intelligent money supported by AI with intelligent market makers and all of this will be really interesting because the world has to develop. That's a very hard problem, and again, part of that is building these healthcare, education, government, and financial fully open systems. But the entire economy is about to change, and that's where the opportunity comes in. And I think that fits within the other buckets too. But we haven't seen anyone else looking at a post-labor monetary system. What does currency look like, and more in that space?
Just on that point, like you're just saying, crypto is better at getting humans to do things, like the coordination layer.
There's the coordination layer, but there's also the question of intelligence will be the reserve currency, I think, in the future. Because if you take 10 coders to do something and then you add another 200, it probably won't happen. Whereas now we have inference time scaling. Again, OpenAI is one of the first things whereby you're bounded by the amount of compute that you have to do things, and you can outcompete people if you have more compute to run these agents as they become mature. So we think that will be the foundation of a new economic system. Given, again, why would you hire any graduate programmers or most content writers when the AIs can do that more? You have to have a realignment of the social structure. And that's coming incredibly fast. Again, the average human has an IQ of 90, globally adjusted. Average. OpenAI's new AI model scored 120. So big
TOKEN2049 attendees would be 125.
way up there, way up there.
Right, yeah, of course. Got it.
Yeah, I think two big use cases or sort of directions to explore for crypto for AI, which is what I'm passionate about. Number one, as I explained before, really blockchain can be a good bookkeeping system, a copyright sort of implementation solution to help you understand who has contributed what in the whole life cycle of developing AI models and applications, right? There's data contributor, compute contributor, model developer who have the recipe, applications who integrate the model endpoints into serving really the AI customers who give feedbacks to this model to iterate to the next version, which is also equally valuable, and then to the final monetizing, who are basically the AI consumers paying for the application. All of these people here, what they have done work can be bookkept by a blockchain, and then you can really empower a lot of new economic mechanisms for building AI model, which is much more accelerated compared to today's solutions in terms of building AI model. That's number one. And number two, and I think the whole DeFi ecosystem of crypto has a lot of high expectations in terms of finding vehicles of investments into the AI ecosystem. And they don't have too much choices today, right? The best way they can probably do that is either they have an ecosystem from going to these early AI project builders, or they look at Mostaque and try to find some stocks that has some AI relevancies, right? But then why don't we find out a new way of tokenizing the AI access, such as data sets and model, and then there's probably gonna be initial offering of these AI access to benchmark their fundamental value, and then you can have the whole secondary market from the DeFi ecosystem to start taking the upsides of these AI access, right? And I think the most challenging problem here is how do you define the fundamental values of these AI access? You cannot simply just throw a stable diffusion model onto the marketplace and, hey, I think this was $100 per share, because it doesn't make sense because it's an open source model, right? It doesn't really come with a revenue model yet. So really, I think you first need to build a whole fundamental value infrastructure for the proprietary models, how to benchmark its performance judged by the community, how to find a business usage and then revenue, and then check all of these things in a trusted manner. And then you go from there to really find the investment vehicles for this access.
So I don't have a good example of AI and crypto together, enabling a unique use case. But there are, so what Sean just mentioned, generally, if you go to the whiteboard and you start designing, for example, how decentralized storage should work, right? If you don't want to be using S3, how should storage be designed for the future? You will notice that there is no way to design it without a blockchain layer where people settle, I agree to store data, settle if something went wrong. Similarly, I think that the only way for us as a society to train those extremely large language models as we go, into the future, is through, pulling resources together on the blockchain and having a smart contract that distributes the value generated by the model back to the people. who contributed towards training it. So those are examples where crypto enables AI. And I think a very interesting example of where AI enables crypto is, if you guys saw my talk earlier today, I was showing an example, a demo of a small application where you can on the fly generate fully functional Web3 applications. It's like an agent that has access to all the metadata on chain, to all the contract ABIs. And then you can explain what you want to do in completely non-technical terms, and it will lay out for you a fully functional application where you can do things. And that enables, like today, if you want to have to issue any transaction that requires any composability, you effectively need to know how to send low-level transactions yourself, right? Like if you want to take advantage of Uniswap and some other contract in the same transaction, neither of the applications on their own will give you that opportunity. But with AI agents that build applications on the fly, you can just explain your intent, right? And you will get a fully functional app which is tailored towards your particular use case, right? So now all the people who understand well DeFi and have like interesting ideas of how to use composability of contracts in an interesting way, but are not technical enough to construct those transactions. Now will be enabled in an interesting way with the AI developer to issue any of those transactions using without using any technical understanding.
Yeah, I think, personally, from a practical standpoint, I'm definitely most interested in the AI impacting crypto usage aspect, like Alex just talked about. One of the main things I think we see complexity within crypto over time is that crypto has gone from generally monolithic systems to extremely asynchronous, multi-chain, multi-environment, not one-to-one compatible, not like bijective in terms of like what two contracts are supposed to mean to one another. And so because of that, there's actually insane amounts of complexity for the average end user going into a crypto system to say, I want to do this trade between a Solana asset and an Ethereum asset. There's even just something that simple, figuring out what bridge to use, figuring out how to distribute your transactions over a bridge, figuring out sort of like some optimal routing. All of those things are only getting more complex. There's almost like a second law of thermodynamics for crypto. Like every year, it's just like insanely more complex than it, in some ways, than it needs to be. So I think those tools that distill that are going to be extremely important. And we already see that with a lot of Telegram bots that hide all that complexity for the user, make it feel like they're just in a chat room or having fun. And I think this idea of making crypto transactions fun to use is actually one of the most important things that AI can bring to crypto. On the other end of the spectrum of like the crypto and AI at the same time, I mean, I just spent a lot of time playing around with O1. I also have a lot of friends who work on that team. And so I actually feel like the paradigm shift of moving things towards inference and things being much more adversarial lends itself to crypto systems where I can actually have prediction markets on the reasoning abilities of different models. So, as we were talking about earlier, it's probably hard to make a direct marketplace for a particular model. You tell me you fine-tuned a model with some data, how am I going to actually test that? Your MLMLU type metric is not going to tell me whether there's actually a difference. There's never going to be some perfect way of comparing them to figure out how to price them. On the other hand, for reasoning models, I can actually imagine comparing different reasoning algorithms, which are effectively adversarial with each other, and figuring out how to price them. And I think we will likely see that shift towards inference-based models being more friendly to decentralized systems.
That's fascinating. Well, we're out of time. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and thank you for a fascinating discussion. Really enjoyed it.